Hi, everyone. We are starting the Tabitha Shuck Reigns series again. I just wanted to keep this page on here for a moment. This opening for Tabi could have never been done without LOS 105's song, which is titled Tabi's Song, and for Indie Archive, who created the video, who's done a lot of the drone footage for Tabi's case. So I will make sure that I add Indie Archive's link into the description right after this show. Please go check him out. He does wonderful work, and we are so glad to be in partnership with him for Tabi's case. With that being said, a lot of people have asked me about the book, and I don't know that you're going to be able to see it very well with the background, but I'm trying. What Happened to Tabi by Josh Sigler. This came out last year, and a lot of people have said, well, I don't read a whole lot. I like audiobooks, or I can't get the book. Josh is still selling the book in the Justice for Tabitha Facebook group. I did post how you can reach him if you would like a copy of the physical book. He is still selling it. But he has also partnered with us. We promoted the book when it came out. Josh came on and did an interview with us. That is in the Tabitha Shuck Reigns playlist. And he has given me permission to go ahead and read this as an audiobook for all of you. So this is going to be part one. I'm going to read the foreword, the introduction, and chapters 1, 2, and 3 today. And I'm going to take myself off screen and show you some pictures while I read this. I'm assuming it's going to be about a half an hour. It's about 38 pages, I believe. And then from there, I'm going to start pre-recording the next chapters so that you can hear it for yourself. And it'll just come out as a video on the channel, and you can watch it whenever you have a chance. I will let you know in the Facebook group for Tabitha Shuck Reigns when those next sessions are coming out, and I will also put it on the community page. Okay, so I'm going to take myself off of here. And we're going to start reading. So once again, this is What Happened to Tabi by Josh Sigler. Forward. Anyone who speaks up about injustices in the world is not concerned about their reputation. You can't call things out and be people pleasing at the same time. Freedom comes from not being controlled by other people's attempts at false shame, blame, or guilt. Shannon Thomas. It says, hello, my name is Josh Sigler. I spent the lion's share of my childhood growing up in Tipton, Indiana, where I was a 2002 graduate of Tipton High School. I received my bachelor's degree in media studies from Manchester University in 2006 and always had a dream of being a journalist. In the fall semester of my freshman year of college, 16-year-old Tabitha Shuck Reigns was found murdered in the Tipton City Park. Being a native Tipton, The case always fascinated me. I was blessed to have a 13-year career as a journalist, spending 6 years as a writer for the Kokomo Tribune. During that time, I was assigned to write a feature story about the Rains murder and really started to dig into the case. During my research for the case, I sent a Freedom of Information Act request to the Tipton County Prosecutor's Office, seeking access to the case files pertaining to the murder investigation. They denied my request because, as they stated, it was still an open case, and letting me access the files could hinder any future investigation attempts that could potentially bring about fresh charges, as no murder convictions were attained in the initial investigation. Soon after the feature story ran in the Kokomo Tribune in 2015, I was contacted by an anonymous source who claimed to have information about the case. The only stipulation was that I was not allowed to know the source's identity. I was told to make my way to an address, and waiting for me near the entrance would be a box with the purported information. It turned out that this anonymous source was providing me with a number of the case file documents that I had been seeking. I never knew the identity of the source, and this individual had me go to a neutral location where the files were located. I obtained those files through that anonymous source via legal means without any direct contact with the source. I have no information as to where the files I received originated from, nor the pattern of succession in which they changed hands before they were provided to me. And even if I was aware of the source's identity, the state of Indiana protects journalists from being forced to identify those sources in the Indiana Shield Law Codes 34-46-4-1 and 34-46-4-2. I promised Tabi's mother and stepfather, Buffy Parrish and Mark Tate, that I would investigate this case and produce, as best I could, the most accurate representation of how the case unfolded. Any accusations levied in this book are done so merely on the opinion of the source from which the accusations came from and do not represent my beliefs, nor should they be confused with the factual representation of the investigation, evidence collection, and subject interviews made by law enforcement laid out in this documentary. I made a promise to Tammy's family that I would do this, and I am proud of the finished product. So there are a total of 12 chapters and 216 pages. Introduction. Every small town has its secrets. Some are more deeply held than others. In this small Indiana hamlet, known for its marshy land, ideal for agriculture, the rumor mill often runs wild, twisting and manipulating those secrets like the whistling wind, bending through the branches of the massive, century-old oak and maple trees in its scenic city park. Those hollowed civic congregation grounds in Tipton, Indiana, normally alive with fellowship, became a scene of macabre horrors in early October of 2002, when the body of 16-year-old Tabitha Shuck Rains was found face up, floating in the Cicero Creek, with a single gunshot wound in her forehead. Though the investigation was extensive, The subsequent prosecution and trials resulted in no murder convictions. What happened to Tabi Raines? And was the investigation truly as extensive as it initially seemed? The full truth may never be known. Those secrets have remained safe for over 2 decades now. In the days and weeks after the murder, speculation ran rampant with whodunits. There were rumors of drug-fueled rage and jealousy-driven fallout over sexual trysts as motives for murder. Eventually, the content of the scant physical evidence, combined with the questionable character of the key witnesses, provided a breeding ground for conspiracy theories. Nowadays, the case simply sits, collecting dust. Those who weren't directly affected by Raines' death have moved on. Documents obtained through research and networking, including depositions by those with the information regarding the case, have helped make clear the goings-on of the weeks and months following the murder. Tabi, as she was known by her loved ones, left behind a 6-month-old son, Drake. Drake turned 21 on April 6, 2023, making it to his adult years without ever knowing for sure what happened to his mother, who would have turned 37 on November 12, 2022. Time has been kind to some of the major players in the story, while the last 20 years have been a nightmare for others. Chapter 1, The Case. At the time of her disappearance, it was believed Tabi was last seen alive around 6:30 p.m. on October 2nd, when she asked her mother-in-law, Roberta Souders, to watch Drake. Tabi became pregnant at 16, and after being emancipated, married Souders' son, Michael Raines, who was the father of her child. According to Souders, Tabi had been asked to go be with her friend, Amanda Pratt, at a local hospital where Pratt's grandmother was reportedly gravely ill, and family members weren't sure if she was going to make it through the night. Tabi was officially reported missing on October 3rd, when the police notified the media of her disappearance. Flyers were made and alerts were sent out throughout the state of Indiana. Souders told police that Tabi had told her that Pratt's boyfriend, Kyle Neff, was waiting outside for her. Tabi and her husband, Michael, shared an apartment behind Souders' residence in the 400 block of Northeast Street. The couples were friends and spent time together, so it wasn't out of the ordinary for Kyle Neff to pick Tabi up. But Tabi never returned. Michael returned home that night after school in Indianapolis, and after work Thursday morning, stopped by Neff's house near U.S. 31 and State Road 28 to ask if he'd seen Tabi. Neff replied that he had not. After speaking with Neff, Michael continued on to school in Indianapolis because he had to take a test. He was working towards associate's degree in mechanics and business from Lincoln Technical Institute. But increasing apprehension and encouragement from his family prompted him to leave school and return to Tipton, where he filed a missing persons report at 6:10 p.m., just short of 24 hours from the last time Tabi was seen. Tabi's mother, Buffy Parrish, said the search started immediately. "We looked everywhere," Buffy said, a weathered voice hiding her pain. Her last name was Tate in 2002, and she's since remarried. "We searched woods and cornfields and creeks. We looked in the park, but never in the creek. Honestly, I do not think she was put there that night, October 2nd. That had a little to do with it. The search continued into the weekend. On the afternoon of October 5th, 3 days after Tabi was last seen alive, 2 children fishing off the bank of Cicero Creek in the southwest corner of the city park spotted what they believed to be a human body. One of the children had believed they'd seen a body while fishing in the creek the evening before, but was reassured by an adult that it was just a mannequin. The following day, however, the duo were fishing again at the same location and again saw what they believed to be a body in the water. This time, they consulted a different adult who, after observing what was in the water, also believed they were looking at a human body. They notified the authorities a little before 2 p.m. On-duty police officer Chet Netherton arrived on the scene and confirmed that there was a body in the creek, floating in about 18 to 24 inches of water and lodged up against rocks and other debris along the creek bed. Other authorities, including Tipton Police Chief Gordon Taco, Assistant Chief John Alley, City Police Detectives Gary Stout and John Moses, Indiana State Police Detective Tony Frawley, Tipton County Coroner Brad Nichols and Roy Silvers, a trainee with the coroner's office, soon joined the scene. Meticulous observations were made. Blood was observed seeping out of a wound on the forehead. The left eye was swollen with discoloration, and the body was clothed in just a sweatshirt. No pants, socks, shoes, or underwear were present. The body was placed into a white body pouch and then into a Stokes basket for the trek up the creek bank. Family members did not see Tabi's battered corpse firsthand, but they were able to identify her by the rings taken from her fingers, as well as a picture of a tattoo they were shown, which matched the tattoo she had on her hip. When Michael Raines first received the news, he said he lost control of his emotions like never before. At the time, I was having issues with my knees, so I had a walking stick, he said in a 2015 interview. They didn't know what I was going to do. I just dropped my stick and bolted out of the police station. Without looking, I ran right across heavy traffic. It was right there on the main drag. I made it to Richter Chiropractic about a block away before I just crumpled in tears. They took me behind the police station, and I just sat there sobbing, bawling. I've never been a crier or one to show that sad emotion much. After Michael had calmed down enough to keep his overwhelming emotions in check, at around 10:30 p.m., a little over 8 hours after Tabi's body was discovered, he was interviewed by Detectives Stout and Frawley. Michael and Tabi were married on February 3rd, 2002, and their son Drake was born a little over 2 months later. At the time of Tabi's death, Michael was working at Burnett's Service Center in Kokomo, while also attending Lincoln Tech down in Indianapolis. On the day of Tabi's disappearance, Michael came home in between getting off of work and leaving for school in order to give his mother money. He was still only 19 years old, and although he and Tabi shared an apartment, it was connected to Souter's residence as part of a triplex. He worked, but provided his mother with a portion of his paycheck so that Roberta could pay the portion of Michael's bills that she was still overseeing. He arrived home that day at about 12:45 p.m., he said, and Tabi was home with Drake. Tabi left Drake with Roberta and then hopped in Michael's truck so that he could take her to her GED class near the old Lincoln Elementary School on Ash Street. Once you dropped her off there, is that the last time you saw her? Stout asked. That is the last time I seen her, Michael replied. He went on to school, and when he returned home at 10:40 that night, Tabi and Drake weren't in the apartment. He went around the house to his mother's apartment to see if Roberta knew where Tabi was. She told me that Tabitha had dropped Drake off to go be with Amanda Pratt at the hospital, Michael told Stout, because they didn't think Amanda's grandmother would make it through the night. It was about 6:30 p.m. when Tabi left Drake with Roberta, and she left. Tabi told Roberta that Kyle Neff, Amanda Pratt's boyfriend, was waiting for her outside. When Tabi didn't return home, Michael went to Neff and Pratt's house at about 1 p.m. the following day to see if they had seen Tabi. Michael told Detective Stout that Kyle Neff confirmed he had picked Tabi up at the house, but that he drove her uptown to the village pantry store because Tabi was meeting somebody. Did he say whether it was a male or whether it was a female that Tabi was meeting? Stout asked. He thought it was a female, Michael said. He mentioned, in his word, a dyke. Stout had been fielding reports and Tabi was reported missing a couple days earlier, and several of the informants who came forward had heard murmurs that a girl whom Michael was familiar with may have been involved in Tabi's demise. A dyke? Okay, Stout said. I'm not trying to put any names in your head, but did he ever say the name Elizabeth? No, Michael said. Did he ever say the name Balser? No. Do you know Elizabeth Balser? Stout continued to press on with the name of the individual he'd been hearing repeated reports of. Yes, I do, Michael affirmed, adding that he had met Balser through some of his friends in years past. Do you know Balser to be a lesbian? Stout asked. Yes, I do, Michael said. Michael went on to deny that Balser had ever made a sexual pass at Tabi, and also denied when asked that Kyle Neff had made any sexual advances towards his wife. Michael did say that the two couples, he and his wife, along with Kyle Neff and Amanda Pratt, hung out often and partied together on numerous occasions, where the four would partake in drinking and drug use as well. But those get-togethers had stopped happening in recent months due to growing discord between Tabi and Amanda. If I told you that I've already spoken with Kyle and Amanda, and they told me that the breakoff was because of the fact that your wife told Amanda that she wanted to split Kyle and Amanda up so that she could go to bed with him, did that ever happen? Stout asked. Not that I'm aware of, Michael said. Could it have happened? Stout asked. I guess it's a possibility, Michael admitted. Okay, if they stated to me that Tabi had mentioned to Amanda that she would like to do a threesome, meaning your wife, Amanda, and Kyle Neff, do you believe that could have ever been said or could have happened? Stout asked. Yes, Michael said. Tabi had told me something like that before. Did she say she wanted to do that again? I'm sorry, it says, did she say she wanted to do that? She said she had thought about it, but she didn't think she'd be able to do it. Stout then asked if the fallout between the couples could have been due to an ongoing discussion of sexual relations, and Michael said that it was a possibility. Well, I need you to, like again, You know your wife is dead, correct? Stout said. That is correct, Michael affirmed. And we need your truthfulness in everything, Detective Stout implored. She had asked me what I thought about it, and I told her I'd have to think about it, Michael said. I didn't really see it ever happening because, like I mentioned before, Tabitha hasn't ever had an encounter with a girl. That you know of, Stout tried to qualify the answer Michael had given. That I know of, Michael said, and that I didn't think that Tabi would be able to go through with it. And she told me that she didn't think she could go through with it. Detective Stout also pressed Michael for information about Kyle Neff's drug habits. Have you heard any information about Kyle Neff having some cocaine or doing a bad drug deal, and some people were after him? Stout asked. Yes, I have, Michael said. Tell me what you've heard about that. I've heard that Kyle had stolen, I believe they told me it was $2,000 worth of cocaine, Michael said, and that whoever stole off of wanted his money, or that they'd come after Kyle's girlfriend and son. Michael told Stout that Tabi's stepfather, Mark Tate, had given him this information the day before. Michael then told Detective Stout that he would be fine with consenting to a search of his apartment, and added that they wouldn't find any illegal drugs in the apartment if it was searched. He also denied ever striking Tabi, but did confirm that the couple had been having relationship issues over the past few months. What was those problems over? Stout asked. Financial. Stress, Michael said, but denied that there were any physical altercations centered around those issues, and denied a second time ever striking Tabi. Michael did confirm that he owned a 3-inch razorback style knife that he gave to his stepfather, Jeff Souders, the day Tabi's body was found, because, as he stated, I wasn't sure what I'd run into out searching for Tabitha, if I'd come across somebody who might have felt threatened. Who were you going to look for? Stout asked. I was going out to look for Tabitha, Michael said. But if you had to use the weapon against somebody, you would use it? Stout asked. I'd defend myself, Michael said, also denying that he owned any guns. Indiana State Police Detective Tony Frawley then took over the questioning. Mike, I've got a question, he said. If you could name someone, let me ask you this question. Did you do anything to cause the disappearance or the death of your wife? No, I haven't, Michael said. If you could give me the names of someone who you thought might be responsible for that, who would that be if you could think of somebody? Frawley asked. I couldn't think of anybody who would want to harm Tabitha, Michael said. The observations made during the postmortem examination of Tabi's body showed that somebody clearly did want to harm her. A significant trauma that went far beyond just a shooting had been inflicted upon her in the moments before she was killed. The autopsy was performed on October 7th in Indianapolis. Coroner Brad Nichols and trainee Roy Silvers joined Tipton Police Department technician Kevin Steiner, and the trio picked up Tabi's body from the locked refrigeration unit at Tipton Hospital for transport to the Indiana University School of Medicine's pathology department for autopsy. In the anatomic findings in the autopsy report, pathologists discovered a gunshot wound to the head from an undetermined distance away. The fatal bullet was from a gun held 6 to 18 inches away from her head. It was testified to at trial. The bullet entered the right side of the head, perforated the scalp, anterior skull, and brain, then penetrated the posterior skull. Tabi also had multiple contusions to the forehead, upper cheek, and right corner of the mouth, left cheek, along both jaw lines, and the right side of the neck and shoulder. Lacerations were also noted along the neck and top of the right shoulder. Her blood tested negative for carbon monoxide, but tested positive for cocaine, with 1320 nanograms per milliliter present, as well as 430 nanograms per millimeter worth of benzoylicone, also present, meaning some of the cocaine had metabolized. The gunshot wound to the head was determined to be the cause of death, and the death was ruled as homicide. On October 9th, Tabi's loved ones mourned quietly at young Nichols' funeral home in Tipton before a closed casket covered in flowers. Leonard Skinner's Free Bird and Eric Clapton's Tears in Heaven were among the solemn tunes played during the service. It was hell, Parrish recalled. We didn't sleep a lot. People in Tipton were great. They came out in herds to help us pass out flyers, posters. We had them posted everywhere. The community was wonderful when all this happened. Even after when we found her body, they jumped in and helped pay for the funeral and expenses we had there. I think the community comforted us a lot with helping us and being concerned. Not much was reported to the press about the investigation from the middle of October through the end of 2002. In January of 2003, police were still awaiting results from evidence sent to the state crime lab for testing. Michael felt that the investigation centered around the wrong person, himself, in the early going. He spent seemingly every day at the police station answering questions, even though he was still trying to juggle school, work, being a single father, and his grief. I already had enough bad publicity as it was to be like, I'm not cooperating with the police, he said. It would have made me look bad, but it ended up getting me kicked out of school. I still don't have that degree, but I'm $20,000 in debt because of it. The kid from Illinois came and told them his story, and it finally turned the police off of me. If it weren't for him, they'd still be on me, Michael noted in an interview. All right. Chapter 2, A New Twist. The kid that Michael Raines referred to was 17-year-old Andrew Bush, whose statements to police turned the investigation on its head. On March 20th, 2003, Detective Gary Stout and Tony Frawley, the latter of which would go on to serve 2 terms as Tipton County Sheriff between 2015 and 2023, traveled to Clinton, Illinois, to speak to Bush about an incident he allegedly witnessed at Tipton City Park on the night of October 2nd, 2002. Stout had retired from the city police department a couple of months prior to the Bush development in the case, at which time he joined the Tipton County Sheriff's Department. However, he was allowed to remain on the case as a detective. Bush told police he lived in Tipton for a short time with his father before moving back to Illinois to live with his mother. He said he was sitting alone in the Tipton City Park Pavilion a little before 11 p.m. on October 2nd when Tabi walked up. Bush recalled she seemed antsy. Much of Bush's story is recounted in a probable cause affidavit dated March 24th, 2003. Bush and Tabi shared some vodka that Bush had and engaged in small talk for a few minutes. Bush said he then witnessed a car driven by Elizabeth Balser enter the park and stop on the west side of the pavilion. Bush also recognized Kyle Neff, who got out of the front passenger side of the car. Liz Balser and Andrew Bush lived in the same neighborhood during Bush's brief stay in Tipton. He said he met Kyle Neff through Balser, but added he hadn't spent much time with him. Neff and Balser then disappeared down the creek bank west of where the vehicle was parked. Bush and Tabi continued to talk while sharing the vodka for the next 5 to 10 minutes, at which time Neff and Balser were spotted near a footbridge at the other side of the park. This time, there was a third person present. Whom Bush identified as Jonathan Yates. Bush said he didn't associate much with Yates, but knew him through mutual friends. Balser yelled and motioned Tabi over to them, and Bush joined Tabi for the trek across the park, roughly 150 meters from the pavilion where they were seated. Upon reaching the trio, Balser began accusing Tabi of stealing cocaine from her and demanding to know where it was. Tabi denied knowing anything about the missing cocaine, at which time Bush said Balser pulled out a handgun and pistol whipped Tabi in the side of the head. As Tabi crumpled to the ground, Bush said he lunged to her aid, but Neff and Yates grabbed him by the arms to restrain him. Balser then pointed the gun at Bush, yelling, "Shut the fuck up. Don't say a fucking word." Balser then turned back to Tabi, who had partially gotten back up after being knocked off her feet. Bush said Balser then pointed the gun at Tabi's forehead and pulled the trigger. The autopsy toxicology report had stated that Tabi tested positive for both alcohol and cocaine at the time of her death, seemingly giving credence and plausibility to Bush's story. After Tabi fell back to the ground, Neff and Yates let go of Bush, but seemed to be in disbelief about what they had just witnessed. Bush told detectives. Balser demanded Neff and Yates help her drag the body away, and as the two moved to do so, Bush said he ran from the park, down the footbridge, and eventually all the way to his home across town, approximately 2 miles from the alleged murder scene. Detectives said at the time that Bush's information corroborated details known only by authorities. He recounted the story to Detective Stout and Tipton County Prosecutor Jay Rich 11 days later while walking through the park. However, Bush also admitted to consuming copious amounts of narcotics that night, in addition to the alcohol. In a deposition, he admitted to taking 120 milligrams of the opioid Oxycontin and 3 or 4 milligrams of the benzodiazepine Xanax in order to smoking a large quantity of marijuana. During Balser's trial, her attorney, Robert Alden, tried to poke holes in Bush's testimony based on that and other details. 13 years later, Alden still remembered the case well. Alden said in a 2015 interview that Balser had an alibi and that she couldn't have committed the murder because she was in Kokomo with her mother at Little Daddy's Adult Entertainment Club. He submitted photos taken from ATM surveillance cameras in Kokomo to try to verify Balser's whereabouts. Alden also said the defense obtained phone records that seemed to prove Balser bought marijuana from someone in Kokomo that night. He added that one of Balser's friends, Rhonda Epp, later acted like she was trying to hook up with Bush, slipped a tape recorder under his pillow, and then asked him why he had lied about Balser's involvement. One moment, guys. Okay, sorry about that. I had to cough. Bush said it was because he just didn't like Liz, Alden said. And my personal opinion is Neff was guilty. And I don't think she was killed in the park. They scoured the park with a metal detector and found no shell casings. I hate that there's been no closure for the family because they still don't know who did it. Kyle Neff developed into the linchpin for the events that led up to Tabi's murder as the investigation went on. Bush also allegedly told Epp in that conversation that he was the yes and no man for the case, but didn't elaborate on what that meant or who he was doing it for. Bush also told Alden in his deposition that he remained in Tipton, where he was a neighbor of Balser's, for roughly 5 more weeks following the murder before moving back to Illinois. He said he had heard through the grapevine there were people who wanted to hurt him, and although he saw Balser around the neighborhood, he never spoke to her again. He never saw Yates or Neff again either. Police arrested Balser, Neff, and Yates the night Bush made his statement in Illinois. The following day at a press conference, authorities announced the charges in the case. Balser was to be charged with murder, criminal confinement, and criminal recklessness. Neff and Yates each faced charges of murder, criminal confinement, and assisting a criminal. Stout died in December of 2003 after a year-long battle with cancer. He had served the Tipton Police Department for 30 years, first as a patrolman and working his way up to chief, where he had led the force from 1979 to 1991. In April of 2004, Neff accepted a plea deal from the state. In exchange for his testimony, the state agreed to drop all charges against him except for aiding, inducing, or causing battery, a Class C felony, if he pled guilty and testified against Balser and Yates. Neff later testified that in exchange for cocaine, he arranged the meeting between Tabi and Balser in the park that night so that Balser could beat Tabi up. He also admitted to providing Balser the gun. He said Balser claimed she just wanted the gun to scare Tabi into telling her where the missing drugs were. Balser then asked Neff and Yates to watch her back as she fought Tabi. Neff, who admitted to being on cocaine that day, said he got the gun from his mother Debbie Neff's house. He then met Balser in the Tipton High School parking lot across from the park on his motorcycle, where he gave her the loaded gun. The two then got into Balser's car and drove to the park. However, a state police supplemental report stated that Amanda Neff Pratt, Kyle's wife, came forward in June of 2004, right around the time the Balser murder trial was set to begin, with a slightly different story, stating that Kyle told her Bush was not present during the shooting during one of her visits with Kyle while he was in jail awaiting sentencing. Amanda went on to tell the state police that on the night of October 2nd, 2002, Kyle parked his motorcycle at his mother's house at the corner of Conde and Jackson Streets, where he went into his mother's house and retrieved the gun, placing it in his waistband. He then walked the short distance to the park where he met Balser and gave her the gun. Kyle told Amanda that Balser then walked to the park pavilion and returned with Tabitha Raines. The trio were joined by John Yates and walked behind the baseball diamonds in the park located near the creek. Balser then accused Tabi of stealing cocaine from her, and the two began a physical altercation. Kyle said he then heard a gunshot, but didn't see who fired it. But he knew Balser was in possession of the gun from their previous interaction. Tabi's body rolled down the creek bank, and everyone ran from the scene. Amanda told authorities Kyle then called her around 9 p.m. from his mother, Debbie Neff's house. Kyle arrived home between 9:30 and 10 p.m. wearing clothes dissimilar to those he was wearing earlier in the day on October 2nd. Kyle then went on to tell his wife that he was saying he was telling the same story as Bush so he could get out of jail earlier and see his kids. Balser's trial received a change of venue and was moved to neighboring Hamilton County. It got underway on June 14, 2004, and after 11 days of testimony, the jury was given deliberation instructions around noon on June 28th. After 18 hours of deliberation in the early morning hours of June 29th, the jury returned not guilty verdicts on each of the counts: murder, criminal confinement, and criminal recklessness. Balser was remanded back to the custody of the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, where she was being housed during the trial, where discharge and release procedures were ordered to be set in motion. Balser backed out of an interview for the story after initially agreeing to talk. At the time, in the fall of 2015, she was incarcerated at Howard County Jail on unrelated charges, and after consenting to the interview through a jail commander days prior, reneged on the interview once the reporter arrived at the jail on the morning of the agreed-to schedule time. Balser has a lengthy criminal history, including convictions for operating while intoxicated and possession of marijuana. In 2013, she accepted a plea bargain and pled guilty to a charge of operating a vehicle as a habitual traffic offender. More than 2 years of the 3-year sentence were suspended, and she was released from jail before the end of 2013. Then in June of 2015, Balser was arrested on a trio of level 6 felonies, including operating a vehicle as a habitual traffic offender, operating a vehicle while intoxicated with a passenger under the age of 18, and operating while intoxicated with a prior conviction. Charges against Yates were later dropped. He was scheduled for a trial in August of 2004, but in mid-July, less than a month prior to the start of that trial, he was freed. Rich said at the time that he dropped the charges because he did not think he could get a conviction considering the circumstances. The terms of the dismissal motion allowed for the possibility for the prosecution to refile the charges at a later time. Attempts to contact Yates for the story in 2015 were unsuccessful. However, in 2023, Yates responded after a second contact attempt and did provide a statement. I was overly cooperative with law enforcement years ago, he said. I gave 3 statements, depositions, willingly, without legal counsel, without any inconsistent answers each time. I willingly agreed to a polygraph that once I passed, they discredited. I had no helpful nor hindering information then, John continued, nor do I today. Speaking on its currently adds nothing helpful. If anything, please resort back to my 3 statements. I realized many years ago people are free to have any opinions they see fit, he concluded. It was of no concern to me then, nor is it now, what people have or haven't chosen to believe, nor is it my place to try to change those beliefs. Yates seemed to be on to something in one regard. Any mention of his statements to police seemed to be absent from the case files that were leaked and obtained through an anonymous source. Additionally, the state's assertion that Yates was involved was highly problematic, as evidenced by the results of Yates' polygraph exam. The results of the exam were absent from the discovery files initially obtained through an anonymous source, but later surfaced, thanks to a second anonymous source. On October 8, 2002, 3 days after the discovery of Tabi's body, Yates voluntarily subjected himself to the polygraph and signed a stipulated polygraph agreement that had been prepared by the Tipton County Prosecutor's Office. The results of the exam were revealed that same day and delivered to Detective Stout. Prior to the exam, Yates stated that he had heard that Tabi was murdered on October 2nd, telling authorities that he heard on the news that her body was found in Cicero Creek and that she had died as the result of a gunshot wound. Yates explained that he knew Tabi from school and had dated her a couple times, but because she was 4 years younger than he, had stopped seeing her. He said that he had not seen Tabi in the previous 4 or 5 months, and he denied that had ever engaged in sexual intercourse with her. When the examiner revealed to Yates that sources had told authorities that he stated, "I hurt a girl really bad," following Tabi's death, Yates denied having ever made such a statement. Yates admitted that he had gone to Tommy Nelson's house on October 3rd, where Yates witnessed Michael Raines talking about Tabi's death. Tabi had only been listed as a missing person at that point, a report that Michael filed the day of the purported conversation Yates overheard. During the examination, Yates was asked a series of control questions, with 2 questions that the report refers to as relevant questions, pertaining to his knowledge of the murder. His neurological activity was monitored for anomalies. The first relevant question asked to Yates was, "Are you intentionally withholding something important about Tabitha's death?" "No," Yates answered. "No," Yates stated. And the second relevant question read, "Do you know for sure who killed Tabitha Raines?" "No," Yates stated. The results of the exam were clear. Based on the information furnished to the examiner on this interview, and upon evaluation of the polygraph charts administered during this examination, it is the opinion of the examiner that the subject, Yates, has been completely truthful. The report stated, "Physiological responses noted on this subject's polygraph charts are in such a pattern as to cause this examiner to believe that Jonathan C. Yates did in fact pass his polygraph examination," the reporter added in all capital letters. Additionally, in the post-exam debriefing, the examiner told Detective Stout that Yates denied owning any guns. When he tried to identify firearms, it seemed obvious that he was not familiar with guns at all, the reporter stated. He couldn't distinguish between rifles and a shotgun. Yates had no criminal record and has remained a resident in Tipton, where he developed a reputation as a kind individual with a servant's heart. In October of 2004, Neff was sentenced to 8 years in prison on the charge of aiding, inducing, or causing battery. But after successful appeals, he was released in January of 2006, according to the Indiana Offender Database. Neff declined to be interviewed for the newspaper story in 2015, but did say that the elements of the case in which he testified to were the truth. He added that Michael Raines had nothing to do with Tabi's death. Neff obtained his commercial driver's license and drove semi-trucks for a number of years after his release from prison, before returning to help his mother run the family business, Cheryl's Restaurant. Other than a pair of speeding tickets and other commercial operating infractions, he stayed out of the crosshairs of law enforcement for many years. Tabi's murder wasn't Kyle's first run-in with the law. He had previously been convicted of 2 counts of theft, tiered as Class D felonies at the time. He wouldn't stay out of the crosshairs of law either. A warrant was issued for his arrest in February 2017 and in June of 2017. Neff was sentenced to 4 years for sexual misconduct with a minor, a level 4 felony. As part of a plea agreement in which child molestation charges were dropped, he was released from prison in August of 2018 and served the rest of the sentence through community corrections and probation. The remainder of his sentence was listed as completed in August of 2020. He also entered a diversion program for misdemeanor charges of false informing and resisting law enforcement, stemming from an incident that occurred on January 1st, 2022. Although public proceeding records aren't clear as to the circumstances which led to those charges. Citing Indiana Code, Prosecutor Rich denied public information requests to access records regarding the Tabi Raines murder case and subsequent investigation. I'm reluctant to release records in this case, as it could compromise the integrity of any investigation that could arise in the future surrounding the circumstances of this case, as I would be regarding any major case this office has handled, Rich said in a letter. The lack of closure still haunts the family. I trusted the police, Buffy said. I had faith in them. It made me take a whole turnaround in the way I look at our justice system, our police officers. But when you flip it around, it was great to see all the people in the community cared and understood how I was feeling. But in the same sense, you had people that didn't seem to want the truth to come out. It was hard. She doesn't think the full truth came out in court. I do not believe Liz is the trigger person, she added. I haven't believed that from day one. I talked to Liz since then, and she told me I didn't have anything to do with this, and I believed her. But I also told her, you know what happened. But she would not elaborate. She knows to keep her mouth shut. You have to kind of expect that. There were a lot of threats made when they were trying to find out. To my family, to people who knew, a lot of things came out. You leave town, you shut up, or you die too. They did. They left town. What's ironic about Balser's revelation to Buffy that she had nothing to do with the murder is a supplemental report in the case file dated January 28, 2003, where Detective Stout stated that he spoke with Balser's sister, listed as Diane McClish in the report, where McClish revealed to Stout that Balser admitted to her that she was present when Tabi was killed, and added that it took place in the city park. Additionally, an anonymous source came forward during the research for the story to reveal that while housed with Balser in the Hamilton County Jail, while Balser was kept during the time leading up to the trial, as well as during the trial, Balser bragged about committing the murder during recreational time in the commons area of the jail. Chapter 3, Butterfly Effect. Tabi's son Drake seemed to adjust quite well into his teenage years. He lived in Sheridan with Roberta Souders, his paternal grandmother, and they talk about his mother quite often. It's tough on the young man who, while the case remains unsolved, will never have a shot at true closure. His anger is because, how could somebody be so cold, Buffy said. He's told me, I can't touch my mom. I can't listen to her laugh. I can't see her smile. That's what I miss. He hasn't had a bad life. His other grandmother has done a fantastic job with him. He's a good, respectful child. But of course it hurts. He doesn't have his mother. Buffy lacks the closure she seeks as well, but is better equipped to cope with the void. She speaks often with her advocate and has had an opportunity to speak with the parents of other murdered children over the years. I feel like I know what happened, but no one will listen, Buffy said. I've just gone on living life. I fully believe karma will take over and God will deal with this. If I hear something, I report it to my advocate. I can't report it to the police. Karma seemingly smiled on Buffy in March of 2014 when she won $2 million in the Hoosier Lottery Powerball. She picked up the ticket on a Saturday morning in Tipton and forgot to check the numbers. When she went to finally check them at the grocery store, they told her she'd won, but that she couldn't cash the ticket at the store. So she and her daughter Tara raced to Indianapolis to get to the Hoosier Lottery office before it closed that day. She was then delivered the news. It was exciting, but almost too exciting, Buffy said. Something like that happens and you think, wow, what do I do? You don't want to be one of those people that is broke in 5 years. I pretty much immediately invested it, and my husband continues to work. We've just tried to make it to where the money will last us. Poetic justice is how I look at it. That was a gift. I go back to karma. You'll get good if you do good. If you do bad, eventually it's going to catch up with you. And that's how I look at the people who hurt her. It'll catch up with them. The fortunes for Michael Raines haven't been as positive. He's dealt with anguish over losing his wife and with mental illness. He says it's too hard to hold down a job. When he does get an interview, the first thing he's usually asked is something he feels they have no business asking. With today's media, you can go online and look someone up, their history, Michael said. Then they start poking with questions because people make assumptions based on what's been printed. I don't hold any secrets that for a long time, everyone thought I had something to do with it. When I was finally cleared, it was cleared privately. The police never stated that out in public. The general populace still thinks I still had something to do with it. He too feels victimized in an offhand way. He says the way he was treated in Tipton following the murder left him emotionally scarred and bitter. He says the slander and lies ruined him. The night of October 2nd, 2002, didn't ruin his life, he said, but it ruined his outlook on life. He remembers his wife as a smart, athletic girl who not only had dreams, but also had the world at her fingertips. She would have been a great mom. I know she would have been a great mom, Michael said. She had a spirit and energy that I don't have. I don't have that socially outgoing exuberance or that smile that just draws people to me. She was that for me. She could have done whatever she wanted. She was smart enough, determined enough. He joined the military in 2003 in an attempt to provide a better life for himself and Drake. He spent 6 years in the National Guard and did a tour of duty in Iraq in 2008. He left with arm problems and post traumatic stress issues for which he received partial disability. Michael signed temporary guardianship of Drake over to his mother when he left and has never gotten him back. He tries to get together with his son on the holidays, but recent disagreements with family have prevented that from being a comfortable situation. I just know now he's accustomed to a lifestyle I can't provide, Michael said. I do good to take care of myself these days. Some people say I make excuses, but others' choices can affect you just as much as your own, he added. Some things you just don't get over. I just want to be happy. I haven't been happy in a long time. Every time you get close, something happens. That is the end of chapter 3, everyone. I want to thank you for joining me. I will have the next few chapters out by the weekend. Like I said, that's going to be a pre-recorded video, and so will the future ones. But I will let you know when they are out. Does anybody have any questions based off of the chapters 1, 2, and 3? Confess your heart or you'll never be happy. Tell us the truth. Exactly. On a side note, they gave a lot of information about Elizabeth Balser. I was advised that once again she has been arrested and I believe is still in jail. And that happened last week. So things continually to not go her way. Justice for Tabitha, exactly. All right, everyone. Confess your heart or you'll never be happy. Tell us the truth. That is the motto of this case. That is why I am the advocate for the family. We want to know what happened. In order for people to be able to discuss this case more openly and anonymously, we are creating a Discord for Tabitha. It's in progress, and I'm hoping to have it done within the next week. Because with Discord, you can join, you can make up whatever name you want, and you can discuss the case, leave information, things like that in the Discord for us to look at. So once that is completed, I am hoping that all of you will join the Discord and be able to talk about this case more freely. I'll let you know when that is ready. Until the next time, remember, justice matters for each and every victim, and especially in this case, for Tabitha and her family. I'll see you soon. Bye.